Well, we had futures gap lower. Sunday they recovered and then they went positive. We saw the market off the 20-period moving average there with the S&P 500. During the market session, we had Iran retaliate on the U.S. striking their nuclear sites over the weekend, which I told you was going to happen. It did. So many people tell me that that wasn't going to happen, that Trump's going to chicken out. You know, they call him this taco or whatever. I'm not in either political party. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I understand Trump. He used force in the past. He's not gonna back down to this, and that's why he did it. Same people are calling him a warmonger. You know, no matter what, they're going to do whatever. I understand Trump, and that's why I was able to predict this. That's why I understand what's going on in the Middle East. I told you this was coming before it ever happened. I was wrong about the timing. I thought it would go on probably to August, but now we know why. Now know that Iran was just weeks away from getting a nuclear weapon, and that's why they had to go forward with it and green light it immediately. We had this retaliation by Iran. Again, Trump is saying that Iran gave the U.S. advance notice of the missile attack in Qatar, trying to save face with their own people. And again, the United States, who knows if they'll even respond to this? They may not. I believe when they took out the Iranian military leader back in Trump's first term, response by Iran, and I don't believe the United States responded to that. If Iran was serious about trying to harm the United States, they're not going to telegraph what they're going to do, trying to de-escalate it by not having casualties, but trying to still save face after being humiliated on the world stage for the United States, doing what they threatened that they were not supposed to do. But yet, again, they make a bunch of idle threats. I told you, if they actually harm military personnel or you know, have a legitimate response, you know, the United States would whack them upside the head and make their head spin. They are no match for the United States. They're not even a match for the little tiny country of Israel. Now control their airspace. Again, Iran is so much weaker than everybody keeps telling us. That's why I was able to predict what I predicted. We were told this was going to be this big regional war. No countries are coming to the aid of Iran. It's not going to be a regional war. This is going to be a strike that's going to be over in a few weeks. Then it's going to end. Now, if Iran continues to do what they're doing, or maybe because of this telegraphed retaliation, the United States still responds. I don't know that they do. We'll see what happens. But again, we're likely to get a bigger correction. I told you there are two possibilities. One, the divergence gets a larger divergence, or we get that lower high scenario. I'll be talking about both of those scenarios. The market's shrugging all this off. Oil dropping 7%. The Dow was up 0.89%, up 375 points. The S&P above 6,000, 6,025, up just under 1%, up 57 points. The NASDAQ up just under 1%. The Russell up just over 1%, 1.1%. The VIX down 3.83% to close just under 20 at 19.83. I've been making my Bitcoin video. By the way, if you want to see my latest Bitcoin video today, I'll link it at the end of this video. Those signals are still bearish, but Bitcoin's getting a counter trend. About Bitcoin getting a counter trend, and the S&P still possibly making new highs. We'll look at the indicators, and I'll show you, and you can see what you think. But I haven't, in my videos, heard and seen what Trump has said. Let's see here. Trump thanked Iran for giving the U.S. advance notice. Trump posting, it's time for peace, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if the United States just shrugs it off. Again, Trump doesn't like these forever wars, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not in either of these political parties, I'm an independent, but I understand Trump. He doesn't want to be in a forever war. That's why I keep telling you, this is not going to be World War III. This is not going to be a regional war. They're going to strike, and then it's going to end. If you do other strikes, will give us a larger pullback, or maybe some other catalyst. It's not going to be a forever war. The forever war has been 1979, Iran continuing to strike the U.S. The years, many strikes on the U.S., Iran and their proxies, and on Israel. That was a forever war. And again, Breed Trump is he doesn't want another war. He's opposed the forever wars in the past. So I think he's not afraid to use military force to make the world a safer place to protect Americans. Again, even if the United States does end up responding to this, which who knows, or if further retaliations by Iran that they end up responding, again, this is not going to be a forever war. This is going to be limited strikes that are going to eventually end, and Israel's going to wrap things up. They're supposed to wrap things up in a couple weeks. They extended it just a little bit longer. It's not going to continue to go on and on, accomplish what they wanted to do, and that is to dismantle the nuclear program. They have now successfully done. Now Israel's dealing with the launchers and the longer range missiles. Choose the shorter term missiles and the shorter term and range missiles to strike Qatar, the military base in Qatar, running out of the long-term range missiles that can reach Israel. So again, this is not going to keep going. And the other thing, Israel is destroying the launchers, and so attacks are becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. So this is not going to continue, as everybody keeps telling us. But again, and I haven't read everything, so you have to excuse me. In my Bitcoin video, when Trump's saying all this stuff, and they had with his cabinet, I guess, in the Situation Room. I haven't heard if they're going to respond or not, but it looks like the U.S. might let this go. We'll see what happens, but at a risk of escalating this further, or even, again, another catalyst giving us a bigger pullback as Bitcoin is already in. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like to chart, you like indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. Take a moment to partner with me. I would really, really appreciate it if you could step up to the plate and help out. Sponsors, just a direct relationship with you. If you like to chart, you like indicators, follow the link below. It'll take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want. I thank you for your consideration for that. VIX, again, told you to watch the 50 period. It jumped up, got rejection at the 50 period here. Told you again, in order for volatility to return, you got to have a push above that 50 period. We're getting rejection at it. So again, do we end up coming back down below the lower band right here? Try to get that relief rally that I talked about over the weekend. You know, the big sigh of relief that this isn't going to escalate into something bigger. It's a contained strike by the United States. But I keep telling you over and over. But those on social media continue to tell us it's going to be a regional war, World War III, and again, it's a bunch of nonsense. The MACD here rolls back over. We still can see the S&P and the NASDAQ still try to reach the levels, my original target that I told you about. See momentum flip back to bullish. End up getting a larger divergence right here. Had this divergence on the VIX, we could see a larger divergence develop here. See in a higher low and have a discrepancy with the S&P 500. We are getting the 10 above the 20 here, but they're both still below the 200. Again, if we go higher on the S&P, the upside is likely limited, but we could get a false breakout, as I have warned. That was my original thought, and again, I told you I could be wrong about that because of a lower high scenario. Tensions heating up here in the Middle East. So see if we can see the advance resume tomorrow or later this week. Rejection at the 50 period moving average here on the VIX. That's a positive thing for the market. You know, we had momentum signals turn bearish Wednesday. The market was closed Thursday, and then Friday we had the bearish reversal of conditions, but it really hasn't been able to flip, for the most part, the signals, the trending signals. Here we had some warning signs of a possible reversal, but then now we're flipping right back to the bars turned neutral, and now it's turning back to green for the S&P 500. So again, you still got a shot at resuming the advance. You still have a shot that it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and that we get 5 to complete the final push higher, as I've said. Scenarios are still possible, but if momentum flips right back to bullish tomorrow, then my original scenario has a much better chance of playing out. Remember, I told you over here we got warning signs, but then we still went and made a new high. You can see something like that here. Warning signs here, but we still went and made a new high. So again, does the divergence become better defined? Very well could be. Original prediction still could play out, as I keep saying. That's why I told you over the weekend we still may end up getting a relief rally with all of this before all is said and done. Bouncing off the 20 period, we're bouncing out the momentum cloud, and we hear, again, my trend signals for the most part are still bullish. Momentum flip back to bullish tomorrow with the bullish reversal of conditions. We can go up and still make new highs. That's likely going to be the end of it. The upside is limited. Rally to the peak over here at 61.47, or again try to hit the trend line near 6,200. Are still blue right here. Got the reversal at the top, the sell-off, and then with the higher low, higher high, we saw the bars flip back to blue. They remain blue. And again, I talked about the sequence counts. We got the 13.9 right here. Is that just giving us a short-term pullback, or is that starting a larger pullback? Again, I talked about the 9 counts in the weekly time still being in play. NASDAQ completed it. This is the S&P daily right here. This is the S&P weekly chart. I talked about this 9 count being in play. Now, right now, 7 bars the high of the count. If we end up high from 2 weeks ago, if we end up moving above that level, the 9 count will be perfected, and you'll have perfected sell signal. That doesn't mean that the 9 count produce immediate reversal. Like I said, NASDAQ still may move higher above the 9 count. Sometimes they mark turning points here. Bar 8 was the bottom of the count. Bar 9 was the higher low. Other times, sometimes the counts turn immediately with bar 8 or 9. Other times you go a little bit higher. But do we still reach this level? Do we still challenge the February high? My original prediction was that we move to a new high. That still may end up being right. If the signals, momentum signals, turn back to bullish, then it probably will be right. Be aware of this count. We have the 13 and 9. Maybe that just gave us a pullback, and we still see this weekly 9 count still end up playing out. Now, if we sell out before the end of the week, the count could get canceled out. As I said, if you drop below the bar from 4 weeks ago, 1, 2, 3, 4, you drop below this level, this count is toast. It gets canceled out. This is what I talked about over the weekend. Why I told you we still may end up getting a relief rally after the United States strikes. I told you I thought they would strike. I thought it was a ploy, delay business, of waiting 2 weeks. I thought they were getting things ready to strike, and that was just a ploy. I was correct. Saw the strikes over the weekend, as I correctly told you, predicted that was going to happen. That was correct. Does this complete or not? We'll see what happens. When it turns back to bullish, you got a good shot that this count completes. We already have it on the NASDAQ. It is on the NASDAQ 100 ETF, the QQQ. And again, told you, it is a perfected signal here because bar 8 was the high of the count. But again, we still may go a little bit higher than that. Again, we had a 9 count down here. Bar 8 was the low of the count. May end up overthrowing the bar 8 high, going to a new high. One is not done yet. But eventually, I think you come back, fill this gap, drop below the 50-week moving average, back to the 50-week, moving back to the 200-day and the 50 as they're getting a bullish cross, probably dropping underneath them. The question is the high end, and that's what I've talked about, those two scenarios. But this other stuff about we're about to have this next leg down of the bear market, I think that's rubbish. I think that's a bunch of poppycock. Move is corrective, and these are the same people that told us we were going to crash at the bottom. These are the same people that told us this rally was never going to happen. And the NASDAQ rally back up over 30%. We've seen the S&P rally up 25%. People told us that wasn't going to happen, and now they keep telling us as they do. And a day out, here's the next leg down of the bear market. I think we're going to get it, but again, after we go to much higher levels. But I do believe a pullback is coming, but we still may not be done with wave 1. Trying to remain objective. Those are the two scenarios I think are in play, and signals are still hanging in there. We very well could try to close above the upper Bollinger Band, as I've talked about, or even reach this trend line. Still impossible if momentum flips right back to bullish. We had warning signs that we're going to get kind of sell-off. Is it just a mild sell-off for a wave 4? When we get the wave 5, we're seeing bearish signals. Even though we're rallying back up, we're getting more bearish signals. Background's turning bearish. That may just be short-lived. Again, if we're going sideways, it may be short-lived. If we resume the decline and start seeing all the trend signals begin to flip bearish, we start seeing the momentum go into the negative region with just the divergence rather than trying to form another reference point, then the risk is that, again, we've already peaked and we get the sell-off. It could play out either way. I don't know the future. If you do, if you know the future, you're one up on me. I'm a trader. I look at support, resistance, and mathematically based indicators and moving averages and trend lines. I'm telling you, either way can play out. I told you my original scenario could be wrong. We get this lower high. Trying to play that right now, but we could easily flip back and get a larger relief rally. If we do flip back and turn back to bullish with momentum, and here the momentum line is still bearish, we still have a bearish reversal of conditions. If these signals turn back to bullish, we go up, we go a little bit higher. Again, the upside is going to be limited. Are we starting the sell-off right here and right now? Already peaked, or do we buy a little bit more time? But those are the two scenarios that I think are most likely in play. We'll be watching. Now, I've talked to you about two scenarios, and I've marked them both here. I showed you this chart over the weekend. I showed you this chart last week. Now, if we bounce off the cloud and the 20-period moving average, which we're trying to do right now, and you break this trend line right here from the high right here to the high right here, you break above that and that lower high that's set up, then you can still try to come up here and go to the dotted line, which is the February peak, or the red trend line from the previous highs. You could still try to go up and make a new all-time high. If you get rejection here, you get a lower high below this level, another lower high, and you take out the 20 period, then you can get the correction right now. I've talked about both of these scenarios. Again, those telling us that, oh, here comes the bear market, the next leg down of the bear market and all this other stuff. Again, I told you I thought that was a bunch of nonsense. Again, I do think that the stock market will peak, but later in the year, I think that we finished a wave 4 right here. I think you're getting the first wave of wave 5. Maybe it's done. Maybe we go a little higher originally. Again, I have the guts to tell you what I think. Very few people will do that. I do. Now, I told you, original thought was that we come up here, make a new high, and then pull back. That's still very possible. That if we saw momentum shift, which we did see on Friday, that I turned short-term bearish, and then if it turned right back to bullish, I turned back to bullish. I still think the upside is limited. Peak over here at 61.47 could still be exceeded, or we could even reach the trend line right here, coming in closer to 6,200 if we still try to resume the advance and shrug it off. Remember, I talked about over the weekend, the market, we may see the United States strike Iran, and then the markets just shrug it off and get a relief rally. This could be the start of it, a relief rally, not going to escalate into a regional war, World War III, as we keep being told by those on social media, some of the experts. And again, I told you it's not going to happen. This is going to be short-lived, going to be a couple weeks. It may be that the United States strikes, and that's it. That's all they do, and that Israel continues to take out the long-range missile capabilities and the launchers, finishing striking the nuclear targets that they have, and then it ends. That's all that we're likely going to see happen. This isn't going to be a forever war. This isn't going to be this long-term regional war, boots on the ground, and all the other nonsense that we've been told. And again, predicted this would happen before it happened, and I told you it was going to be a short-lived geopolitical event, and the United States was going to strike, and then it was going to be over. Still believe that. So again, if we can clear the trend line, if we can bounce here, we did get back above the 10 period, the red line, bounced off the 20 period, the blue line, the 10 is still above the 20. Again, we can still try to make a new high. Why do I say that? Because Bitcoin made a new high. Why did I say the S&P was going to, down at the bottom, down over here, that the S&P was going to rally, get back above the 200, the black line, and make a new high? Why? Because I follow Bitcoin, and I told you Bitcoin to do that. Bitcoin did, and eventually the S&P, Nasdaq are going to follow. Now, I could be wrong about this, as I've said. The momentum signals turn back to bullish, and we break this trend line right here. I'm probably going to be right about that. My original prediction, short-term bearish, because I'm trying to be obedient, following my signals. Turn back to bullish. I think we go a little bit higher, but I think the upside is going to be limited, as I've said. I still think you get the larger pullback. And again, I think Bitcoin's already in it. You can see my latest Bitcoin at the end video at the end of this one. I told you we already had the diversions here. I told you it might turn into a triple negative diversions, or we might even move to new extremes on the RSI. But right now, we have a divergence that's playing out. If we do go higher, break this trend line, you could still see that happen. Again, like I said, we could still have a relief rally, that this isn't going to escalate into something bigger. And that's why markets so far have been shrugging it off. I talked about a divergence here. We've got that. Talked about getting back above the signal line. Well, we got rejection at it. You still may end up trying to be able to do it if we can get that rally up there. So these are the two scenarios that I think are in play. The first one, my original thought, that we come up here, make a new high or hit the trend line and then get the bigger correction. The second one is that I'm wrong about that. We get the lower high scenario, lower than the February peak, and we're in the correction right now, and that we've already, that's why I've marked it as wave one being done right here, this 5-leg push higher, or is this a correction in that we have, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and then now we get a 5, and then we get it. So regardless of which way it plays out, I think you're going to get the bigger sell-off. If we see things flip back to bullish, momentum turn back to bullish, then you buy a little bit more time, and then this scenario comes in play. Maybe we even reach the trend line. I don't know that we do. Originally, I thought we would, but like I said, I could be wrong. Signals turn back to bullish, then we could resume the advance and get a bigger relief rally. Got the MACD real big here so you can see what's going on with it. But again, the stochastic trying to recycle back up. Do we break that trend line? Do we move to a new high and end up getting this larger divergence? We already had a divergence on the stochastic. Did we get a larger one like on the RSI? I think that's still in play. But those are the two scenarios that I think are in play right now. And my relief rally scenario, then we're going to break this trend line and move above this high. That will invalidate the wave one being done here, and it will validate the other count that I have with the wave one likely completing over here. And again, L8 wave speculation. So again, my momentum signals could turn back to bullish tomorrow. Bitcoin gets a bigger rally right now. It's been selling off. Likely going to rally back up to the 50 period. You can see my Bitcoin video at the end of this one. Bitcoin makes a lower high. We could see the S&P and the NASDAQ make a higher high, joining Bitcoin, which already made a peak on May 22nd. Remember back over here, and let me just say this. The market moved to a new high in February. Bitcoin didn't. Remember that? Bitcoin had peaked over here in January, and we got a higher high in January at the same time. Actually, shortly after Bitcoin, because Bitcoin peaked on Inauguration Day on January 20th, but the market still made a new high with both NASDAQ and S&P 500. Bitcoin made a lower high at that time, and Bitcoin made a lower high recently. Bitcoin's already peaked a month ago. Bitcoin peaked May 22nd. The market is following Bitcoin. You have to understand this, and it could peak. The market could either peak here, okay, or it could peak up here somewhere and follow Bitcoin and get the bigger correction, going Bitcoin lower. I think they're both going to form right shoulders, whether we've started it here or go higher and then start it. I still think you're going to get the bigger correction. So those are the two scenarios I believe are in play. Us, there's no way we're going to pull back. Nothing's going to stop this market. I think that's out of touch with reality. Those telling us we're about to get the next leg down to the bear market, I think that's out of touch with reality. And I think the truth is somewhere in between with these two scenarios, either the lower high or the higher high scenario that's going to be followed by a bigger pullback. Here's a NASDAQ 100. It was up just over 1%, bouncing off of our 20, just like the S&P 500. Anyway, just going back to the S&P 500. If we pull back now or go higher and pull back, I think the cloud will act as support. I think we'll end up dropping below the 50, the 200 as they get a bullish cross or right before they get a bullish cross. And I think that we'll come back and fill the gap back over here, eventually fill the gap back over here, and likely establish a higher low at a Fibonacci retracement. But the cloud, the trending cloud is where I think we're going to move to if we break the momentum cloud right here, which we're trying to bounce off of. With NASDAQ, let me just bring up the trending cloud right here and the momentum cloud that we're, again, doing the same thing. We're trying to balance off the momentum cloud. If we pull back right here, right now, then again, the trending cloud comes into play. We're just, again, the 50 is just below the 200 period moving average. I think if we correct either pushing higher or having this peak hold, I think you're going to end up pulling back to this cloud right here, just under the 50 and the 200. Again, golden crosses often can be associated with tops. When Bitcoin got the 50 crossing back above the 200, it peaked right after that. Again, the bearish cross right here, we had marked a bottom. We had a bottom just before that happened. They're often associated with tops and bottoms. They can lead to bigger pullbacks or bear markets. But right now, again, I still think we're going to go much higher. I think we're going to get this pullback, but I think it's going to be just for a higher low. I think I've made that pretty clear. So again, I think we're going to push up here or get this lower high, one or the other, this lower high scenario, If the momentum signals turn back to bullish tomorrow, then I'm going to turn back to bullish. Here, the upside is limited. And again, remember, Bitcoin broke out, and right when it broke out to a new high, everybody goes, it's a breakout. Bitcoin topped out. Again, these people, oh, it's a breakout up here. They're not bullish when I'm calling these bottoms, and when I called the breakout here and Bitcoin the double bottom pattern. And they sure, when you move to a new high, they sure get bullish. The herd, they love to buy tops and panic sell at bottoms. That's what they do. Again, taking profits on long positions and gone short, momentum flips right back to bullish, turn back to short-term bullish. Just so you know that, I do think the upside is limited. I have to evaluate whether I want to get involved with that or not. I do think it will be limited. I haven't made my decision yet. But anyways, regardless, either here or here, I think you're going to get this bigger pullback. And I've talked about both of these scenarios at great length and detail. We could have a triple divergence on the RSI, so do keep that in mind. We can have a larger divergence here on the MACD as well. So again, could we get the relief rally here? As I talked about over the weekend and late last week, I told you if the United States strikes, it could just be that we get a relief rally with it. Certainly possible. That's happening right now, at least so far. We'll see if that continues. I told you that because I told you it could be the complete opposite of what everybody thinks. The bears are telling us, oh, we're going to have this massive World War III and regional war. The markets, they've remained pretty calm through this, may just shrug it off and get a relief rally because they think the war is going to be contained and it's going to be short-lived. They've been pricing in an Iranian defeat, which is now happening. Now, we got the bearish reversal of conditions on Friday, and I told you that might just be a wave 4 pullback. We still might reach. I told you originally I thought we'd go up to the February high or maybe the trend line right here. That's still possible if this is just a wave 4. I talked about this over the weekend. The other possibility is that signals remain bearish and we end up getting a bigger sell-off right now. But again, I told you not to rule out the possibility that my original thought could still be correct, that we come up here and then get the bigger sell-off for the right shoulder and end up still seeing some green here and then get that larger divergence. I told you the divergence might be done, and I turned short-term bearish because the signal turned bearish. If it flips right back to bullish, then I'm going to turn short-term bullish, but I still think the upside is limited. But I told you that I could be wrong about that upside. Again, I told you that, again, if we flipped right here, then the chances are that we may start the larger pullback right now. Again, we don't want to rule out that we make a new high. Either scenario is possible. The people running around on social media telling us, oh, here comes the next leg down of the bear market. I mean, they've been telling us that all the way up. Rally, the rally, 25% rally that they told us wasn't going to happen, that's what they've been saying. Everything they keep telling us is going to do it. Moody's downgrading the GDP. Moody's downgrading the U.S. Tensions with China, tensions with the European Union. And now, again, tensions in the Middle East. Every single thing that they've told us hasn't been able to take the market down. Now it's kind of going sideways. So, again, don't rule that this my original scenario doesn't play out. It's still very possible. As traders, we want to be very, very flexible and open-minded. Signals momentum is bearish right now. It could easily flip back to bullish. If it remains bearish, then you could start the bigger pullback right now. I still think it's possible. That's why I'm talking about both scenarios. And again, we may see a relief rally after the U.S. strikes, because I told you it was likely going to happen this weekend. I was correct, it did. And I talked about the relief rally scenario, which right now we're getting, or relief rally that it's contained, it's not going to get bigger, going to have this regional war, and Iran telegraphing what they're going to do before they do it because they're scared to death of Trump. Market shrugging all this off. This is just Iran trying to, save face. That's all it is. After being humiliated, talking big and telling the United States they better not do it. The United States did it. They're trying to save face. Other people, oh, we attacked the United States. I mean, it wasn't a serious attack. You don't sit there and warn right before you do something if you're trying to de-escalate the situation. They're scared of Trump. That is for certain. Again, can we still make a new high? Can we reach this level? Maybe if the signals revert back to bullish. Remember I talked about over here how we saw signals turn bearish, but then they turned back to bullish. Talked about it over here. Remember, we saw it turn bearish briefly, but then it reverted and we still went slightly higher. I think you could get something like this, as I talked about, and I talked about both of these scenarios over the weekend. Now, again, I am of one of these two opinions, that we get that lower high. My original thought was we make the higher high, and I told you I could be wrong about that. That is still very much in play, and we don't want to rule that out. Still get a better defined divergence, as I keep talking about, on the MACD and on the Awesome Oscillator. And you may see something like this, where you get a multiple point divergence. We had it here in the month of December with the December high. Then we got the January high. Then we got the February high. Here we had a peak in mid-May. Then we get it in here in the beginning of June here, right around June 11th, I believe. And then now here towards the end of June, do we have this divergence, or end up seeing something like this, where we end up going and getting a little high above the February peak, or maybe even try to tag the trend line? That is certainly possible. If the signals here turn back to bullish, then we could see that happen. And if that happens, if we do see the signals turn bullish here this week or tomorrow, I'm going to turn right back to bullish short term. But I believe we're going to stall out in this area should that scenario happen. Eventually, I think you're going to get this bullish cross. I told you we could still reach this level and get a golden cross and have that mark the top. NASDAQ, the same exact thing. I told you we might get a better defined divergence. We had this divergence, but I told you it might be better defined. This might be the wave 4. We might get push up and get wave 5. We're within striking distance of the February peak, striking distance of this trend line right here. And I told you these highs might be pointing to the next high. And remember, Bitcoin did move to a new high before it got now this bigger pullback that we're in. The market is diverging with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's getting a counter trend rally, in my opinion, right now. You could go watch my Bitcoin video and see why I think that. But we could see the market move to new highs. Listen carefully. Are you listening? As I've talked about this over the weekend. We could see the market move to new highs and Bitcoin get a counter trend, a lower high. The market could still follow Bitcoin. So keep that in mind. And again, if the signal here turns right back to bullish, I'm going to turn back to short-term bullish. I told you on Friday I turned back to bearish. The risk is that this bearish signal here now gives us a bigger pullback as we're getting the golden cross. I told you that was coming. Here it is. Looks like the 50 is right below the 50 period moving average, 20,529. And the black line is the 200 period, 20,537. So it's just a couple points, less than 10 points underneath the 200 period moving average. You're likely going to see that this week. And again, if we can flip this back to bullish, the red, again, we're still on a sell signal with momentum, but we're bouncing off the 20 period. The 20 period is a blue line. If we flip it back to bullish, you can still see that divergence. And as I've said, this might just be an ABC corrective move, and we still go higher and get that larger divergence. I still think that is possible, but like I said, if momentum turned back to bearish, I would turn back to short-term bearish. If it flips back to bullish, then I think that scenario, my original scenario, then will play out. So again, both scenarios are still in play, but we got to flip signals back to bullish here if the wave one is not done yet on the S&P and the NASDAQ. NASDAQ daily chart here, about to get a golden cross. Probably see that happen tomorrow.